Welcome to the Broadcast Learning Channel, the ultimate destination for mastering broadcast media technology. Whether you're exploring the fundamentals or diving into advanced techniques, this is where innovation meets expertise. Get ready to elevate your skills and stay ahead in the ever-evolving world of media production, on-air operations, and engineering. With host Annie Billings, broadcast operations and engineering trainer.
Hi, I'm Annie Billings. Welcome to the Broadcast Learning Channel. I am delighted that you have joined us for this session today. Last session, we discussed the Avipas 2040 PTZ camera with auto tracking. And we had a couple of questions that came up. Well, Annie, I'm in a remote environment, or I may be doing Bible study with the PTZ camera, or I may be in a conference room, and I don't necessarily have the ability to run cables because I'm concerned, as we always should be concerned about running cables across the floor, because we always need to be concerned about a trip hazard. So for those people who are in those type of environments where you are actually doing a remote session, whether it's a podcast, your Bible study, and what I want to show you and discuss here today is the SWIT. I'm going to switch to it here so you can see it. This is our SWIT. It is produced by SWIT. It is a Curve500. Now, these both come as a unit. The reason they are as a unit because we have to be able to transmit the signal from the camera and we receive it into our switcher or computer, depending on which one you're using. So when we do that, we want the ability to take that video from the camera and bring it into the switcher or the computer. So with this unit here, it allows us to do that. So we have a transmitter here. The transmitter itself connects to the output, and this is an HDMI output on the actual back of the camera. If you notice here, there are HDMI inputs that are on the SWIT unit here. Now, this is the transmitter. This is the portion that actually connects to the camera. And so that you don't get confused between transmitter and receiver, you can always look at the bottom down here and you'll see where it says TX. TX means transmit. So this is the one that would actually connect to the back of the camera. So on the HDMI port on the back of the camera, you would take an HDMI cable out of that HDMI port and plug it into the input here on the transmitter. Now, the transmitter also has to have power attached to it. So you would attach your power here if you actually have a power supply, and a power supply does come with the unit. So you could attach your power supply here. But now, say you don't have the ability to have a power outlet that is connected to you, because that was one of the questions that came up also. Annie, how could I power my camera? Well, you can always power the camera over PoE, which is power over Ethernet. But you also have to provide power to your transmitter here in order for you to get that video out of the camera. But now, here's the other thing I want to talk about. On the back of this SWIT unit, you can actually use a battery. Now, this is a Sony battery. They're pretty standard in the market. You could choose a Sony battery that you wanted to connect to the back of this. And therefore, you now don't have to have a power outlet to power this guy, especially if you're saying, well, I'm using PoE from my PTZ camera, so I'm not located near a power source. Again, on the back of the unit, you can power it by attaching. Now, the battery comes as a separate device, so you would have to purchase it separately than the unit itself. But this is so if you don't have power to connect actually to the unit itself, okay? So this portion goes onto the back of the camera. The second part of this unit is your receiver. The receiver actually, again, has to be powered, and the receiver has HDMI outputs. So the transmission of the video through this unit here is going to be sent over wirelessly, yes, wirelessly, to the receiver here. The receiver gets plugged into the back of your switcher. So that becomes the source for that camera, plugging it into the back of your switcher. So I'm going to test this today to show you how it actually works. Now, the distance on these unit itself is about 500 feet, that's 150 meters, where this video can be transmitted wirelessly. And I think this is a great feature for anyone who's in a situation where you just do not have the ability to run cables because the facility may not allow you to run cables across their floor, or you just want to prevent trip hazards. Because we know people in a social gathering, if you have more than one person in a room, or you're meeting where there's a group of people, there are chances that people may trip over your cables. Even if you take them down, there's always that risk. So we want to take a look at this and see how it works. So I'm going to show you how to connect the transmitter itself and the receiver.
What the Curve 500 does. The system includes a transmitter and receiver pair that sends full HD video wirelessly in real time. Supports HDMI video up to 1080p 60. Wireless transmission distance up to 500 feet, 150 meters line of sight. Designed for cameras, podcast studios, live production, and field monitoring. Plug-and-play operation with no network configuration required. The system operates using SWIT's CUI wireless technology, which is a dedicated RF transmission system, not Wi-Fi, helping maintain a stable signal even in crowded wireless environments.
So let's take a look here. If you notice, I have an HDMI cable that is actually plugged into the back of the HDMI that is on this particular PTZ camera. Now, this PTZ camera I'm using is another Avipas, but it is the 2020 version. So I've plugged one end of my cable into the back here. This red cable here is plugged into the back of the PTZ camera. So I'm going to use that port as my output. So what I'm going to do next is I'm actually going to plug the other end of this HDMI cable. So it's just a simple HDMI cable, as you can see here. I'm going to take this HDMI cable and I'm going to plug it into the actual transmitter. So here is the actual transmitter. If you'll notice, it has TX on it. We're going to plug that into the HDMI input. So we are taking the output from the camera and we're going to plug that into the input here on the actual transmitter itself. So the next thing we would do is we would need to add, of course, power. Here's your power outlet down at the bottom here. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to add power. So once I add my power to it, I am then ready, and this comes with a lock-in power. So let me show you here on camera. You just simply put your power into here, and it has a little screw knob on it where we're going to screw that in so that it locks. Because what I don't want to happen is for me to be out on a shoot and the cable comes out of my transmitter here. Now, please understand, wherever you're going to mount this on your camera, make sure that it is also securely mounted on your camera so that it does not fall off of your tripod or however you have it mounted. You might want to use some tie wraps that are removable tie wraps to secure this to your camera. Now, the next thing we're going to need to do is I'm going to actually go down to another level and I'm going to take the camera with me. I'm going to take this camera, set it up, and then once I plug in the receiver to the back of my switcher. Now remember, I have to have the receiver plugged into the switcher in order to get my video into that switcher. The video itself is going to be transferred wirelessly because this is a wireless unit. And remember, we're supposed to be able to get at least 500, 150 meters distance where that signal, the video signal, can be transferred without having to connect any cables that we're going to have to run across the floor. So bear with me while I go down and connect this where it is going to be on another level in the building that I'm in. And I'm going to be here. I'm going to come back here and we're going to look at the video output once we connect this receiver to our switcher. And so now I have gone down to the lower level and I've connected the camera. And so I come back upstairs to my studio where I have connected the switch. So let's take a look at what I've done here to connect. So I've actually connected the receiver to the input of my switcher here. So I have a couple of inputs here that are open. So this is on input number 3, if you look at the red cable there. And the output of that, actually the input from the receiver itself is coming out and going into the back of my switcher here. And so what we want to look at now, again, is what does the quality look like? Now, again, I have open walls upstairs here in the open area. However, even though I have open walls, the camera that I just showed you earlier and how to connect the transmitter to it, it is now on a lower level, a much lower level than where I am currently in my studio. So let's have a look and see what the quality of that camera looks like. So if I switch to that camera, which is camera 3, there is the quality of that camera. So you're not losing any information as far as your data and the look of the camera. This is the actual output of that transmitter. And from the transmitter, we're actually coming in to the receiver, and the receiver's output is actually being fed into the back of my OC switcher. So this is what you can actually do if you do not have the ability to run cables because of it may cause trip hazards, or you just, you're in a remote setting and you want to be able to get the video from your camera into your switcher. And again, now if you wanted to just use a computer, so maybe you don't have a switcher and you're using a computer. Now, maybe you're using an application like OBS, then you could take the output of the receiver instead of plugging it into a switcher here like I have it plugged in. I have here a converter. I can actually take this converter, plug the into my computer. This is a USB. End of it, if you can see, is HDMI. So I can actually take this output from the receiver itself, plug it into the HDMI input here on this little dongle that I have, plug the dongle into a USB port on my computer, and now I can feed that source directly into my computer. So I can use it for Zoom, I can use it for Teams, or I can use it to broadcast directly live to Facebook, YouTube, or whatever platform I want to broadcast to using OBS, or if I'm using Zoom or Teams, then I'm live in that meeting with the output from that camera. And again, what does the video look like? Here is the video output from that camera. So I hope that that answers some of the questions that you all had for me offline. And how can you get video from your camera into your switcher or your computer if you do not have the ability to run cables across the floor? And again, we always want to provide safety measures when we do have to run cables. But if you want a setup like this, I do not have a single cable that is running across the floor. This transmitter is downstairs. I'm upstairs in my studio. And again, you can see the quality that transmitter is sending and the receiver is passing into the switcher. Video from your camera into your switcher without having to use a cable. Now, stay tuned for our next session. We're going to talk a little bit more about how you can do PoE to power your camera. So that'll be in the next session that we cover is PoE. What is PoE? Power over Ethernet. Again, I'm Annie Billings, your host, and thank you so much for joining us here on the Broadcast Learning Channel.